Pressure testing gas lines requires using a pressure gauge whose full-scale range is appropriate to the test pressure so you can detect small leaks without overloading the instrument. For a 6 pound per square inch test, choose a gauge with a range that gives at least 5 times the test pressure on the full-scale rating so the needle does not peg, and the calibration remains accurate. That means a 30 pound per square inch gauge is ideal, while a 15 pound per square inch gauge can work if it provides finer graduated markings for small drops. Use glycerin-filled or liquid-filled gauges for vibration dampening when testing on systems with mechanical pumps. This prevents needle flutter that masks tiny pressure losses. Mount the gauge as close to the test point as practical, using a short, rigid connection to minimize capillary and thermal effects that skew readings over time. Zero the gauge at ambient before pressurizing and record the initial reading, then apply the test pressure slowly to avoid shock-induced hysteresis. For leak detection, hold pressure and monitor for a measurable drop over the required test duration. Because the gauge range was chosen to be near 5 times the test pressure, a 1/4 pound per square inch loss will be visible and meaningful. If you need to detect very small changes, use a deadweight tester or calibrated reference gauge in series for verification rather than relying on a too large dial. Always use gauges with a current calibration sticker and a clear traceable certificate when required by code or insurance. And replace or recalibrate any gauge that shows wear, corrosion, or inconsistent zeroing. One of the biggest mistakes is using an oversized gauge designed for high pressures, which eliminates sensitivity to small leaks. Fix this by selecting a gauge with a full-scale range of about 5 times the required test pressure, or using a 30 pound per square inch gauge for 6 pound per square inch tests. One common issue is relying on damaged or uncalibrated gauges that give false stability. The remedy is to verify calibration against a reference standard prior to each test and keep calibration records. Another frequent error is poor gauge placement and long flexible hoses that introduce measurement lag and thermal expansion errors. Correct this by hard-plumbing a short, rigid connection to the test header and insulating the assembly from heat sources, so readings reflect system leakage, not conduit artifacts. BigHomeProjects.com lists licensed local gas contractors and vetted pressure testing pros to help homeowners find technicians who follow proper gauge selection and testing practices. The directory also helps contractors gain visibility and receive local job leads from homeowners needing reliable gas line leak testing and certification.